We are ready? We're ready? Hey, look at that, we're ready to go. Hi, everybody. Oh, wow, I actually got like, it was like, let's do that again. Hi, everybody. Hi. Yeah, wow, I did not think like this crowd would have any energy at like 3 on a Friday afternoon when everyone's like tired or hungover or both, but this is great. Hi, I am Todd Kerpelman. Thank you for attending the Developing with Google on iOS presentation. I'll be honest, I was worried giving this talk on iOS at Google I/O at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. There was going to be nobody here. But like, there's hundreds of you out here. This is a big crowd. You're all here to see this, right? It's okay. Man, wish I'd known there was going to be so many people because there's a lot of profanity in this thing. I'm going to edit as we go. So anywho, often in conversations when I tell people that I am focused on iOS developer products from Google, the reaction I often get is something along the lines of like, what? Like, Google doesn't do anything on iOS, do they? You must spend your entire day eating snacks. But the truth of the matter is, actually, yes, I do mostly eat snacks. But also no. Here's the thing we want you to know. Despite all of the Android M announcements and all the Android Wear announcements and all the Apple versus Google stories you're probably going to see in the blogosphere, we care deeply about iOS developers. We care about building products and services that you are all going to use. And the fact of the matter is we live in a cross-platform world, and we can't provide you with services that you're going to find great unless you can use them everywhere you're building your app. And so to that end, we have a number of Google services available for iOS developers to help you develop your app, engage with more users, and of course, earn a little money. Now, we've been making these libraries more powerful over the last few years, but more recently, we've also taken a few steps to streamline the developer experience so that it is simpler for you to add these into your iOS project. Combine that together, and you get something that, geez, that's a little more disturbing than I thought it was going to be. Shoot, come on, go, get out. Point being, we want to make the power of adding Google to your application simpler for all you developers out there. And the first big step we're taking towards that goal is supporting CocoaPods. All right, applause. Where were you guys during the keynote? We needed you then. So show of hands, who here has heard of CocoaPods? All right, that's like nearly all of you, but and that's because it is awesome. But for the benefit of those of us joining live stream on YouTube, hi YouTube, I'm going to just tell you why CocoaPods is awesome. It takes care of a lot of the steps required for adding third-party libraries to any iOS project. So it does things like grabbing zip files from around the web or your favorite GitHub repository, extracting the files you need, adding them to your Xcode project. It can activate whatever iOS frameworks are needed for this library to work and add any like -obc compiler flags that you might need and blah, 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 blah. And of course, if any of these libraries depend on any other libraries out there, CocoaPods will go out, find those other libraries, repeat the entire process until you have everything you need for your library to work. All these steps are taken care of with one simple pod install command. Like that. And of course, if you ever want to update any of these libraries, CocoaPods will also go out onto the internet, see if anything's changed, and if so, reinstall it again and update it for you with a very simple pod update command, assuming, of course, that the pod specs are up to date. And that's something we'll get to in a moment. So we've talked to our partners, and most of them have basically told us, yeah, this is pretty much what we do anyway. And so we've decided, you know what, let's just make CocoaPods our primary channel for releasing Google services on iOS. And, well, what does that mean? Well, for starters, it means adding this to our documentation. So, hooray, we have documentation that reflects how you work in the real world, which is great. It also means that we are going to be owning and publishing these pod spec files ourselves instead of relying on our loyal fans on the internet to do that for us, which we totally appreciate, by the way. Thank you very much, all of you loyal fans on the internet. We totally dig your hipster mustache. But you know what? This is really work that we should be doing. So we're going to take care of it. This also means, incidentally, that this is now going to be part of our build process. So anytime we create a new build of one of our libraries, our build tools will automatically, behind the scenes, create a brand new up-to-date pod spec file so that it is fresh and up-to-date and ready to publish as soon as the library is, which means that you won't have to sit around saying like, hey, this new library's been out for weeks, who's going to update the pod spec file, who's in charge of this thing, who do I need to bother? All of this, our new pod spec file should be ready to go and published to the world as soon as our library is, which is great. I do regret to inform you, however, that our actual build process for iOS libraries does not involve any giant robot welding arms yet. Working on it. We're also adding support for pod try. How many of you out there know what pod try is? Okay, yeah, fewer of you. Pod try, it's a lesser known command that is now part of CocoaPods. And basically, the way it works is, let's say you're interested in checking out some library, but you're not ready to commit to adding it to your actual Xcode project that you're working on. The way pod try works is I say, hey, let's pod try a library. CocoaPods will go out. It will find that repository out there on the internet, and it will scan it for anything resembling an Xcode workspace or an XC workspace or a project file, preferably in a directory named something like demo or example. If it finds it, it will download everything onto a temporary directory on your hard drive for you and run it within Xcode. So you can kind of fiddle around with the code, make changes, see how the library interacts with you. Basically try out your example really easily without having to do any other work, or add it to your official Xcode project. So to make this work, we have started including all of our samples in the very same libraries that we're supporting, so that if you ask to pod try any of Google's libraries, this should just work. So you should give pod try a try. Another nice benefit of using CocoaPods, by the way, this should reduce a little space. In the past, if we had like library A and library B, and they both required another library to work, like say a logging library, typically we just kind of bundle everything together and do some namespace hacking to avoid dual include errors. But it tended to get these things a little bloated. But now that we're using CocoaPods, we can say, hey, you know what? Both of these libraries, they're just going to list this other library as a dependency, so that no matter how many of these others you add, this logging library will only be added once to your project, which is nice. Right now, this official CocoaPod process has been incorporated by a number of our libraries, and we're working with many of our others to ensure this number grows in the future, very soon. The other part of the process that we want to make easier for you is configuring everything when you are first getting started. There is a lot of power behind some of these features we are building, particularly when you start delving into some of the finer details around something like Google Analytics. But that's also a lot of detail you don't necessarily need when you're just getting started, right? Ideally, you want to spend the first couple minutes of your project saying, hey, I would like my app to use all the things, please give them to me. And so that's what our new configuration flow is going to focus on. We're basically, we're going to give you all the basics and provide you with lots of sensible defaults so that you have what you need to start building quickly. This is probably something that is better demonstrated in a video, so we're going to roll the clip here. Here I'm going to be creating an iOS project, and I'm going to be adding a bunch of services to it. I'm going to add like sign in and analytics and add mob and app invites. And you'll notice that as I go, it might not look like I'm doing much. I'm just kind of clicking a bunch of plus buttons and clicking a bunch of OK buttons. But this tool is doing a lot of work behind the scenes for me. For sign in, it's creating an OAuth client ID, again, with sensible defaults. I can create a new Google Analytics property without having to jump to the Google Analytics page. And I can also link up my AdMob account. Normally, I would have to go to like 2 or 3 different screens to get all this stuff working. Now I can do it all just from one site. At the end, I also get some nice lines that I can copy and paste into my pod file so that I can install all of the libraries that I indicated I was going to use. You might also notice right before this step, I downloaded a info.plist file. The way this works is this new file, in conjunction with the Google pod we have built, will simplify a few more steps in the process for you. So in the past, usually when you were done asking to add Google Analytics or add Google Sign-In, we gave you constants that you had to copy and paste into your code, like your analytics tracking tag or your client ID and so on and so forth. But now our library can simply read those constants out of the plist file that we give you to download. So saves a couple of cutting and pasting steps and some opportunity for careless error. So that'll be kind of nice. And of course, when you do need to go in and adjust your requests per second per user quota limit for some API or activate a certain type of tracking in Google Analytics, you can. All of those pages, all those consoles, they're all there for you, but only when you need them, which is probably not in the first 2 minutes of creating a project. If you want to see more, you can check out our newly released developers.google.com/iOS page. Yes, that's right. We now have an official landing page in our documentation for iOS developers, which is nice. Isn't that nice? Yeah. Yes, it is. It's nice. It's great. So Now that I've explained what we've done to make things a little more streamlined, let me, go away. Good thing I had that with me. I should have practiced that bit in rehearsal. I'm going to give you a tour. It smells like linen. I'm going to give you a tour of what we have available for you. I'm going to cover about 10 of these services over the next 20 minutes, mostly focusing on things that are new. Hopefully, not too much of this is a review, but for those of you who are joining us fresh online, this should be new for most of you. So buckle up. Here we go. We're going to cover 10 services over the next 20 minutes. And we're going to start with what we have to make it easier for you to develop a more powerful app. And we're going to start with Google Maps. Hey, look at that, Moscone Center. That's where we are. How did it know? Magic. So you probably know about the Google Maps SDK for iOS, right? Like you can add some super fantastic, up-to-date, accurate maps to your app. You can add indoor maps in Street View, which is always kind of fun. But most of this you probably knew already. What might be new to you here is the Places API. So Google has a massive database of over 100 million stores and restaurants and bars and coffee shops and theme parks and convention centers all over the world. It's a lot of places. And you can use this database to let the user share where they are with a meaningful location. So instead of my telling you, hey, why don't you join me for Bite to Eat at 37.788204 latitude and whatever longitude, I can tell you, hey, why don't you join me for Bite to Eat at Ryoko's? And here's the address, and here's a little embedded map, which is, I think, the engineer showing off here in the demo. The Places API also includes a few other nice utilities, like a picker UI if you don't feel like building your own, where a user can select their location based on a list of locations near where they are, as well as an autocomplete feature because typing proper names on a phone is still no fun. So we've had this on Android for a little while. You can do this now on iOS as well. This is a sneak preview of a new app from PixArt where users can use the Places API to choose where a photo was taken. So apparently we had Left Shark visiting Google headquarters. He's kind of a big deal from what I hear. Let's talk about Cast. So you know about Chromecast, right? The $35 device that lets you put all of your entertainment on your TV while you use your phone as the fanciest remote control ever. So there's a whole lot of Cast devices out there. Do we not 17 million at the keynote? 17 million sold? It's a lot. But I do want to clear up two misconceptions about Cast. First off, it's not just for use with Android devices. A large number of our users are controlling their Cast device with their iPhones as well. And second, it's not just for binge-watching superhero shows. It is great for that. I do it. But Cast can also be great for playing local multiplayer games. I mean, if you think about it, you have a TV that is perfect for displaying a common game state to everybody in the room. And then every person also has a phone that's ideal for displaying a little bit of private information and entering commands. And if you think about it, this is basically the ideal setup for something like a Texas Hold'em game. But this also pretty much describes every good board game that's out there. I mean, if you think about it like Scrabble or Carcassonne or Settlers or House on Haunted Hill or Dominion or any of those, most really good board games rely on a public game state that everybody can see, and then a little bit of private information for each player and a way for them to enter commands. And this is something we really couldn't do until a couple of years ago when everybody had supercomputers in their pockets with awesome displays and a TV that they could control with it. And so to that end, the Chromecast team has announced the Game Manager API. And it's basically here to help you deal with all the kind of tedious and boring setup tasks you always have to deal with multiplayer games on any platform, frankly. Things like synchronizing your game state across devices and creating a getting started lobby and dealing with people joining and leaving and figuring out who the host is and a whole lot more. I do encourage you to check it out, particularly if you are a game developer and you feel like you have any kind of board game or card game or co-op game that would fit nicely in this model. And it is cross-platform, works on Android and iOS, because it turns out we like to play games with friends no matter what kind of phone they have. Also new for game developers is the Cast Remote Display for Games SDK. And basically, to explain how this one works, I should probably explain a little bit around how Cast works in case you're not familiar. Traditionally, the content that's displayed on your TV was powered by the web browser that lives on your little Cast device. So, hi there, fella. So you might send commands to it, through your phone, say play, pause, play this movie. But in general, if I'm, say, streaming a movie off of Netflix or Hulu, it's the browser on the Chrome device that's doing all the work. It's going out onto the internet, it's getting this data stream, it's downloading it, it's displaying it on my TV. So that means while the movie's going on, I can use my phone for other things. I don't have to keep it on this app. I can switch over and browse IMDb or check my email, or even, and you can do this in a movie, folks, turn off my device entirely. So I don't have to worry about my phone's attention being elsewhere and my movie stopping. My Chromecast will still plug away. But there are a few times you do want your phone to power the display on your TV, and games are a really good example. Like imagine a racing game where you can use your phone with its tilt sensor like a steering wheel, and your phone's fancy quad-core GPU chip with a gazillion processors is powering the game on your giant TV screen. And so for these kinds of cases, we are introducing the Remote Display for Games SDK for Cast. And this will let your phone write to your Cast device as if it were sort of another display on the device. So this is good for single-player games as well as multiplayer games. But if you are building any kind of game and you're thinking, gosh, these graphics sure look nice, I bet they'd look really good on a 50-inch TV screen, you should definitely look into this. Again, available on iOS and Android. I'm going to talk about Tag Manager next. This is the only library where we don't have anything new to announce here, but I just really like it. And I'm the speaker, and so I get to decide these sorts of things. How many people have used Tag Manager, by the way, for anything? OK, yeah, a few of you. Using it in an apps context, the best way to think of it is as a way to configure your app via the cloud. So imagine you've got a game out there, and it suddenly starts getting 1-star reviews because people aren't making it past level 5. And you're like, oh, no, I made level 5 way too hard. Well, one option would be to create a new build with some new settings and get it uploaded to the App Store and approved and sent out to everyone, and hopefully they all download the new version. But if you had configured your game using Google Tag Manager, you could change the difficulty settings and send that right to the cloud without any of that kerfuffle, and the changes would happen very quickly. Tag Manager is also rules-based, which means that if people with older phones start complaining that your game is running too slow, you could tweak the number of particles in your particle system just for those people who have older devices. Or if you had managed all of your app's text using Google Tag Manager, and then you suddenly figure out that your app is big in Germany, you could add an entirely new language on the fly, doing it all in the cloud without having to upload a new version of your app. So it's pretty neat. Also kind of neat, Tag Manager lets you run experiments. So you could make your purchase button say purchase on half the devices out there, and buy now on the other half, and see which converts better. This is the kind of thing that giant companies with like server engineers and business analysts have been doing for a while, but this is also now something that a 2-person shop can try out as well, thanks to tools like Tag Manager. So there's some really fun stuff there. I encourage you to give it a look. I'm going to talk briefly about Cardboard, but I guess we announced iOS support at the keynote, so most of you have heard about this and kind of took the wind out of my sails, so thanks, guys. But yes, hey, we realized you can create a nice VR device using the powerful GPU and motion sensors on your phone. And you know what else has a powerful GPU and sophisticated motion sensors? Not just Android devices, but iPhone ones as well. And so there was really no reason why you couldn't run Cardboard apps on an iPhone, except that nobody had written the SDK yet. And so that's what our team did. They have primarily been focusing on the Unity plugin so that you can take your Cardboard-enabled game from Unity and port it to iOS as well as to Android. I've played with this plugin in the past. This is a terrible demo game that I made. But it is a lot of fun. I encourage you to check it out and see if there are snippets of your game that might work well as a 3D interactive experience. It doesn't have to be your entire game, by the way. One nice thing about Cardboard is you can kind of take your phone, put it in Cardboard, and then put it out again. So if you're making like a base management game, and you think, gee, it would be kind of nice if my user could explore the base that they built in a first-person VR setting, you can just take that part and put it into Cardboard and not worry about converting the entire UI if you don't want to. There are a lot of design decisions you should be aware of when designing for VR, and also when designing for Cardboard versus sort of a more sophisticated, like sensory replacement VR system. Anyway, if you do think this is something you might be interested in checking out, we had a make-believe session. Make-believe is the name of the title. The session existed. That was, I think, earlier today, and it has been recorded and put online, so look for that. And now to round out the develop section, we're at, I think, part 5 of 10, let's talk about Form. Who knows about Form? All right, a few of you. So Form is unique in that it is not a library that makes your app better. It is a tool to help you build better apps. Basically, it's a really cool prototyping tool from a company that Google acquired back in November, and it's perfect for prototyping animations and interactions. So once you're done sketching out how your app is going to look, you can take it into Form and really start to work on how it's going to feel when your user starts playing with it. So all of these animations and interactions are designed using these elements called patches in a flowchart-like design. And the nice thing is this doesn't require any sort of Xcode or programming or anything like that. So your designer can spend their time tweaking and tuning these animations and adding features as they go until everything just feels right, while your engineer can spend their time, browsing Hacker News or fixing bugs as time allows. And the great thing about all this is feedback is nearly instantaneous. This form app runs on your MacBook, and as you're making changes to a view's opacity or its position or the dampening value of a spring or anything like that, those changes happen right away on your device that's connected to it. So, I mean, you don't even have to stop and restart the app. You just get to see everything happen right away in real time. And I find that kind of super tight feedback loop is really useful when you're trying to kind of zero in on making something feel just right. It's really fun and useful. So the team is going to be launching version 1.3 very soon. I believe it's going through the approval process now. But I can give you a sneak preview of some of the features that they're going to be announcing in version 1.3. First up are some new widgets or patches for you to play with, as well as an SDK for you to write your own custom patches, which is cool. There are going to be easier ways for you to share your prototypes with others. There are going to be some new motion curves, new ways to get your view from point A to point B, as well as a few different built-in animation timing, so different variations of slow in, fast out, fast in, slow out, and so on and so forth, as well as support for more material design, things like the card element or the ripple effect that happens when you touch a view. And by the way, this is another thing, not just for Android devices. Try adding a little bit of material design to your app. We have, and I think it looks pretty good. So Form used to cost $80, but since the acquisition, it is now free, which is a savings of, anybody? Shout it out. Yeah, $80, right. You win 20 internet points. So yeah, that's Form. So building a compelling app is great, but let's look at what you can do to keep your users coming back. Let's talk a little about engagement. And first up, new for iOS is app indexing. So the idea behind app indexing is, there's a lot of you out there who have apps and also have websites that closely mirror the content of those apps. Let's say, for instance, you're a restaurant review site, and I'm searching for donuts in the Mission, and your site shows up. So that's great, right? But what happens when I click on that link from inside the Google Search app? Well, it takes users to your website, where you're probably showing me one of those annoying interstitials to go and check out your app, right? Which, I mean, I get it. Like, you've built this nice app. You want to take users to it. But I just want my donut info, right? And you're getting in the way of me and my donuts, and that makes me hungry and angry. It makes me hangry. And you wouldn't like me when I'm hangry. So to address this issue, we take advantage of deep links. And if you don't know what deep links are, they're basically like URLs, but unlike a typical one that, say, points to a website out there, these are URLs that point to your app. And you can include all sorts of data within this URL so that your app can interpret it to, for instance, point to specific content within your app. So the way this works, the way you take advantage of this is for every page on your site, you would generate some metadata. That includes a deep link that points to that page's content in your iOS and Android apps. Then the next time Google crawls your site, it makes a note of these mappings. It says, aha, this is where I can find the same content in your various apps. And then the next time I search for donuts, well, Google will once again bring up your site, but because it knows that this content now exists within your app, it will instead display a deep link that points directly to your app right within the search results. And incidentally, we only show this to users who have your app installed. So, we can still show your regular web content to users who don't, and show your app's content to users who do. Either way, your users now can get to your content with one click, which is great. App indexing is something that we started rolling out last week to a small number of people with a small number of initial partners. I believe OpenTable, Zillow, and Pinterest are among them. And we are hoping to expand this as we get further feedback from our partners and our users, and everyone is happy. So definitely go check out the documentation. There's a place for you to sign up to get invited into the app invites list. So if this sounds like something that would fit you, definitely check it out. Also new for iOS is app invites, and this is also in beta right now. But this tool basically gives you what you need to create a nice word-of-mouth experience so that users can share your app with their friends. Because as we all know, word of mouth is a fantastic way for people to find out about your app. It tends to drive more conversions than anything else out there. I think we all know this, but I'm going to tell you a story anyway of my friend Kelly. This is her, head not drawn to scale. But every Christmas, my friend Kelly, whose sister works for The Gap, sends me a friends and family coupon code for a 20% off discount, right? And I love this thing. Every year, I look forward to it. When's Kelly's email? When's it going to get here? Why isn't she sent it to me yet? Am I still her friend? Oh, no, what's happening? Oh, yay, it's here. And then I go off and I buy, 5 dozen shirts, which is crazy, right? Because, if Gap sent me an email for a 20% off sale, I wouldn't even open it. I'd be like, whatever, marketing, blah, 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 and I'd archive it. But because this is from a friend of mine, this becomes a special event that I am looking forward to. And that's kind of the power of friend referrals and the kind of thing that can drive users to your app. So app invites gives you a way to kind of harness the same kind of energy. Let's say I'm done ordering food online through this food ordering app. And a lot of my examples are about food, aren't they? I should not write this during lunch. Anyway, I have an opportunity to send a free meal to a friend. So app invites would bring up a UI where the user can choose to send these app invitations to any of their friends. You can send these messages via SMS or through email. We also include some recommendations based on, I don't know, people who we think are hungry, I guess. And these invitations come with a URL that expands to include a deep link. There we are with deep links again. That takes players to your app or prompts them to install it from the App Store. Because it's a deep link, you can include whatever information you want to with it, like a discount code. So when the user is done installing your app and they open it up, your app can read in that code that brought users to your app in the first place and say, oh, hey, look, here's that free meal that your friend Todd sent you, right? Your user is happy because they have a free meal, and you're happy because you have a new customer, and everybody wins. And this does work cross-platform. So if you were to open that same link on an Android device, we would take users to the Play Store version of your app instead, because we're smart like that. So up next, this is probably the feature I am most excited about. This is Google Cloud Messaging, and this is our revolutionary new, wait, I'm sorry, what? Oh, I've actually been informed this is Google Cloud Messaging. Still cool. Kind of wanted the back rub, but still cool. The way Google Cloud Messaging works is this is our service that helps you send server-generated notifications to your users. So your server would send a message to the Google Cloud Messaging, or GCM, as the kids say, server, and we would relay those notifications to your target's Android device or your Chrome browser. But now, if you upload your APNS certificate to us, we can send notifications to their iOS devices as well, which means you could send a notification to any of these devices or browsers with just one call instead of like 3 somewhat different code paths that all basically end up doing the same thing. So hopefully this should make your life a whole lot easier. Also new with Google Cloud Messaging is the idea of topics. Basically the way this works is your app can subscribe to any number of topics on behalf of your user. I think we allow like up to 1 million subscriptions per app. So let's say, for instance, you have a sports app, and I want to be notified anytime the Red Sox are playing. Well, in the past, to do this, you'd probably have to record my preference in a database somewhere and do this big, like, select users where blah, blah, blah query, and then loop through the results, and then send notifications to each of those users and the results, keeping track of what device I had so that you could call the appropriate call, right? Well, with Google Cloud Messaging, basically my device would just ask the GCM server, hey, please subscribe me to the Boston baseball topic. Then you can simply say, let's send a notification to everybody who is subscribed to this topic, and I, along with all the other Red Sox fans out there, would get notified with one call. You don't need that database to keep track of it all anymore. You can throw it out, unless you're using it for other things, but you don't need to use it for this anymore, which is nice. Google Cloud Messaging also supports Upstream messages, which is sort of a lightweight way for your client to communicate to your server. And if you're like me and you're like, well, why would you do this instead of just communicating with your server directly? Like, how does this help you? The answer is basically this allows you to support some lightweight communication from your users without your having to stand up a full-on server on the internet. I mean, your server in this case could basically just be your laptop running a little daemon in the background that kind of checks GCM every once in a while. So it's, if you want to get a little bit of information from your users, but think, gosh, a server seems like an awful lot of work, look into Google Cloud Messaging for that. So I think we're down to the last two, but the most important two, because they're the ones that help you earn money. So yes, because there's a point in every startup founder's life when they would like to stop eating instant ramen and start eating like fancy hipster ramen, I guess, which is delicious. And I'm on food again. I got to stop that. All right. So we're going to start with Google Analytics, and honestly, this could have gone in any of the 3 categories I discussed earlier, because Analytics has basically become the lifeblood of a lot of apps. And there's a lot you can measure with Google Analytics, right? Things like how many new users I have, my active users, where they're coming from, what devices they have. You can get real-time analytics, find out how many people are using your app right now and what screens they're on. We allow sort of screen flow, so you can see like what screens or view controllers your users are spending their time on and how they get from one to the next. It's also possible to get some really good demographic information, like the age range or the gender or the general interests of the people using your app. So you can find out, like, is it guys in their 20s that are using my app, or is it women in their 50s? Because depending on the answer, you might want to market it a little differently. You can also measure funnels towards goals. Here the developer is seeing how many people are making it to the app rating screen. And if this were a multi-step process, you could also figure out where they were dropping out. You can track crashes and exceptions too across different versions of your app, and track all sorts of custom events that you want to define. Here are the developers keeping track of how often people level up in his or her game. But one more recent feature that we added that we're very excited about is app install attribution. So basically, Google has partnered with over 20 different ad networks out there so that you can break out a lot of your user data by the ad network that brought those users to your app in the first place. So what this means is instead of going to 20 different ad network sites and logging in and looking at click-through rates and trying to make something meaningful out of it, you can go to Google Analytics and in sort of one view, see important things like which ad networks are giving you customers who retain best, or even better, which ad networks are giving you the customers with the highest lifetime value. Probably something that we'd all be interested in. And last but not least, we've got AdMob. I think probably most of us know what AdMob is, but it's the service that lets you monetize your app by displaying banner ads and interstitial ads within it. This has been available on iOS for a few years now, but there are a few new features that the team would like to make sure I tell you about. First up is native ads. So this is in limited beta, and we are gradually rolling it out to more folks as we go. And if you're not familiar with this concept, basically the way this works is instead of you're just like allocating space within your view and we slap a banner on top of it, you would work with AdMob to specify how you would like to style the ad so that it better fits in with your app's look and feel. We can give you an ad that fits your style without like making some brand manager somewhere freak out. So they get an ad they still like, you get an ad that fits in a little better, and everybody's happy. This is really good for ads that have a more of a distinct look and feel. You can get your ads to feel like they're a little more part of the experience. I believe Atari recently added this to their Roller Coaster Tycoon game. Here you can see it. I mean, it's still clearly an ad. We don't want to kind of trick anybody. But at the same time, this is a little more built into the experience than like if we just had an ad banner pop up from the bottom of the screen. The other new feature that I think is really cool is Audience Builder. And this is what happens when you add the power of Google Analytics to your ads powered by AdMob. It's a really great way of getting the right ads to the right people. For example, I think it's well known that in a freemium game with microtransactions, a large number of your audience is never going to buy anything, which is sad. And you're thinking, gosh, I'd sure like to monetize all these other people, but you're worried that if you bring up something like an interstitial ad with video, that might add just enough friction that it might turn off a buyer or two, and you don't want to do that. Well, with Audience Builder, you could say, hey, you know what? Let's only show these video interstitial ads to the people who haven't bought anything. And for those people who have bought stuff, well, maybe you could show them a banner ad for an in-game item or show them nothing at all. It's up to you. Use the strategy that you feel would work best. But we could get even crazier than this. We could say, hey, maybe I want to show an ad for a power-up, right? But it doesn't make sense to show this to everybody. You only want to show it, let's say, to the people who have made it past the first 5 tutorial levels. And maybe also want to show it to people who have had to restart a level more than 3 times, right? These people, they're getting frustrated. They would probably really appreciate this power-up that you're selling. So now you suddenly have an ad that's much more relevant to these people, and we're getting the right ad to the right people. Or let's say I've got some players that are really competitive into player versus player kind of stuff. Well, I'm going to show them ads for more in-game weapons. But for my players who are really into spending their time dressing up their avatar, I can show them house ads for more awesome hats. Right? It's all about sort of getting the right ads to the people who really appreciate it. And there's a lot more than I could probably cover in this talk. But this is some of the crazy, awesome power you get when you combine Google Analytics with AdMob. So we did it. Yes, Runner, that was a lot of libraries. So I want to circle back to the whole reason I'm here. Once I explain that, yes, Google does do a lot on iOS, often the next question I get is, well, why? Like, why would Google spend any time at all on providing services that make apps better for iOS? And the answer is that, again, this isn't really about Android versus iOS as much as the press would like you to believe. This whole conference is really about all of you, the developers. And so, yes, there has been a lot of Android M and Wear and whatever announcements, but at the end of the day, I/O is our developer conference, and it's about celebrating the people in this room and everybody online, hi online folks, who are using Google services to power their apps. And we want to make this experience great. And that starts with building out the cross-platform part of it. Like, nobody is really that excited about implementing two entirely different sets of services to make their app do the exact same thing on two different platforms, right? Like, I'm not. And if we can do that while also making the process a little more streamlined. No, you go back. Back. If we can do that while making the process more streamlined, we can not only give your app a really great head start in the world, but we can make building it even somewhat delightful. That said, we're not quite there yet. We do recognize we're really just getting started, and there's a lot more I think we could do, and I'm hoping that I will have more to share with you over the next few months. Otherwise, I'm out of a job. But in the meantime, I encourage you to check out our documentation. Give our new configuration flow a try. It is awfully neat. Also, shameless plug, I have a show in our Google Developers channel called Route 85. Hey, look, apparently I only own one shirt. You should check it out. Google needs to pay me more so I can buy a second shirt. It is chock full of iOS info, including a really fun video that we just released like half an hour ago that talks all about CocoaPods in more detail. And if you can figure out where the title came from, you win 30 more internet points. So thank you so much for coming. And now, if you'll excuse me, I really need to get back to eating some snacks. Do we have? We do have some time for questions, but I'll be honest, I'm still learning a lot of this stuff myself, so my answer will probably be, I don't know, or it's my first day. All right, you can just talk to me after.